Welcome back to the show. I'm Johnny Kane here on Open Mic. And if you follow college athletics at all, you know the landscape has dramatically shifted. Television revenues certainly are through the roof. Geographic conferences no longer a priority as different conferences are structured the way that they are. Earlier this month, a federal judge approved a settlement between the NCAA and former college athletes where the NCAA has agreed to provide almost $3 billion in back pay to former and current college athletes. And it also allows schools to directly pay athletes for the first time. The revenue essentially comes from media rights and the revenue that they're going to pay here. So it basically goes back almost 10 years. And universities themselves will now directly handle name, image, likeness. Giovanni Moceri is a graduate from Oakland University here in Michigan, and he provides commentary on how this decision impacts universities that operate in the mid-major budgets, universities like Oakland U.
What's going on, Sportscaster.com? My name is Giovanni Moceri, and the news that we've all been waiting for and have basically been planning on arriving has finally officially arrived. Monday, the NCAA agreed in a settlement to provide $2.8 billion back to former and current college athletes while now being allowed to pay them directly for the first time. Universities will be able to pay their student athletes. So amateurism in college sports, at least at the Division I level, is no more. There's now money involved, much more money involved. And going off an article written by Joshua Lenz on theconversation.com from the University of Iowa, breaks it down nicely in terms of the terms of the settlement. I'll run through them quickly just so we're all on the same page. The NCAA and its conferences will distribute about $2.8 billion in media rights revenue back to thousands of student athletes who competed since 2016. So it goes back about 10 years for these athletes. In addition to that, universities themselves will now be allowed to enter name, image, and likeness deals with their student athletes. So it's no longer just the NIL collectives or boosters or whichever that are allowed to pay for NIL deals. The universities directly are able to. So it's not an employment status for the student athletes. It's just the universities are now able to foot the bill on that kind of stuff. In addition to that, each university that opts into the settlement can disperse up to $20.5 million to student athletes in the 2025-2026 academic year, a number that Lenz writes is likely to increase over the years. In addition to that, athletes currently in NIL agreements with other entities, those deals will now be subject to a third-party review to determine fair market value of it. So they basically, it's not the NCAA that's going to be making those rulings, but they have a third party that's going to try and make sure these deals aren't absolutely insane and allow for a fair market. And finally, in addition to that, the NCAA's maximum program scholarship limit will now be replaced with a maximum team roster size for universities that choose to take part in the settlement. That's one that sticks out to me. No longer is it, you can have your walk-ons, fight to be on the team and be great parts of it. There's now a hard roster limit when it comes to these sports. So now that we're all on the same page, I'll spare you guys the entire history of it. If you want to read Lenz's article, it's well written. You could go and do that yourself. But as far as my thoughts on it, I get worried when it comes to this kind of stuff in college sports. My background is I went to Oakland University and was heavily involved in the athletic department there. So for me, my perspective of going to a university that doesn't even have college football, men's basketball is their biggest program. And even then, the program is on the smaller side. They only bring in about $18 million of revenue a year as far as the entire athletic department. So the money side is very low compared to a lot of the other D1 universities that are going to be heavily involved in this new, direct to pay world of college sports. So, for a university like Oakland, for example, that brings in $18 million a year, where's the 20 and a half going to come from? That's not money that's just lying around. So there's a lot of D1 universities like Oakland, at the level of Oakland, mid-major schools. I don't know if they're going to be able to put up that kind of money. And a lot of programs are even cutting teams in order to try and balance the budget a little bit. For example, we'll stay within the Horizon League. Purdue, Fort Wayne, and Cleveland State have started to cut programs. Now, it's not clear whether it's directly as a result of this. Those cuts were made before the settlement was agreed upon. But there's still like entire sport programs are being cut in order for colleges and universities to try and manage this new almost pretty much a requirement at this point. Yes, they can opt out of it, but really, if you're a D1 university trying to be competitive and relevant and get good talent, you have to opt into this. You can't just sit back and let other universities pay their athletes while you just sit in the 50s, in the 1950s, and just pretend that it's still amateur. You can't do that anymore. So a lot of universities are being, their arms twisted into this. So not only will many programs likely be cut, but in addition to that, when it comes to the scholarship limits, that changes the dynamic of teams too, because walk-ons are such an incredible part of college sports, and many great stories have been had from the walk-on position that, in a roster limit like this, where you basically have a budget to pay your roster, there's not going to be a lot of room for that anymore, I don't believe. And finally, then it was brought up in the article that there could be some potential Title IX issues when it comes to how universities disperse the money. Will some of it mostly go to men's sports? Well, does that violate Title IX? So I see, to wrap things up, I see a lot of potential issues that come up with this settlement, especially when you look to the lower side of college athletics, that makes this very concerning for the many that go unnoticed, to the benefit of the few that get on TV. So my name is Giovanni Moceri, and we'll see how college sports goes.
Solid insight from Giovanni Moceri from Oakland University. It is an ever-changing landscape in college athletics, and we'll continue to cover stories like this one. As again, it's hard to know where it's going to go, where it's going to end. All we do know is that it is going to continue to evolve. When we come back, we're talking golf. Who doesn't want to talk golf? Two Michigan Staters joining the program here on Open Mic right after this.